Hi, I'm Jack from GatelyAcademy. In this lesson, we talk about your fiduciary responsibilities, or sometimes known as your fiduciary duties. We use an acronym that's been used for decades to help teach this part of the class. It's called OLDCAR, OLDCAR. And let's just list out your 6 duties over here on this side of the screen. So we have obedience. Once we list them out, we'll actually go through each one of them for you. Loyalty. Disclosure, ooh, that's an important one. Confidentiality, there we go, confidentiality. Accounting of funds, and the last one is reasonable care, Very likely you're going to see questions about maybe even all 6 of these on the exam. It's a very, very important lesson. I know some of you, once you pass the exam, some of this will fade from memory. This part should not. These are your roadmap to be an ethical agent. This is really super important, not only for the exam, but for real life when you finally go out there in the wild as an agent. So let's take one at a time. Let's start with obedience. On the exam, you're much more likely to see obedience listed as faithful performance. Obedience is just too easy. And of course, the exam service loves to use alternative vocabulary words or phrases, and faithful performance is highly likely what you're going to see in the exam. Obedience, everybody pretty much knows what that is, but faithful performance, that can trip you up if you don't remember it. So yes, alternative vocabulary word. What does this fiduciary responsibility mean? Well, it means you must follow ethical and legal instruction. In other words, if your client asks you to do something and it's ethical and legal, you must do it. Sometimes your client might ask you to do something which is ethical and legal, but not a good idea in your opinion. If that happens, you should try to convince them to do something else. But in the end, it's your client who's in charge, the principal. And if it's ethical and legal, you've got to go forward and do it. If you really think it's a really awful idea, you might send them an email and say, is this what you had in mind? And then have them send you an email back saying, yes, that's exactly what I'd like you to do. Just so there's a track record that it wasn't your idea. I don't think that comes up very often, every maybe couple of years or something. But if it's ethical and legal, you must follow their instructions. Next up, loyalty. This is very straightforward. You must always, put an underline underneath that, always place your client's best, underline that one, interest first. Wow, really no wiggle room in that one. That's pretty straightforward, right? Not second or third, not some of the time, not their kind of interest. Always best first. No equivocation, no wiggle room. Pretty straightforward. Loyalty. Disclosure. This one tends to trick people up a little bit, so I just want you to pay special attention to this one. This is a situation where if you're the agent here and your client is here, you must share any information that you have. You must share that information, or if it happens to be expertise, because you're a real estate professional, any type of information you must share if it might have a material impact upon the transaction, Let me give you an example of that. It's going to be something that matters, might change the price somebody's willing to pay, or it might even convince a buyer, for instance, to back out, or whatever it happens to be. But if you have some information or expertise that might make a significant impact upon the transaction, you're obliged, as being someone's agent, you must share that information with them. Even if that results in them backing out of the transaction and you don't make a commission, or what is more officially called a fee, tough luck for you. Your duty is to your client. Next up, confidentiality. And here's a really good test question. Confidentiality survives the end of agency. So even after you're no longer their agent, because maybe you sold their house or whatever the case may be, the duty of confidentiality continues on. Really important, and that actually sounds like a really good test question. In a nutshell, you're going to learn things about your client. Your client's going to tell you certain things, or your clients will tell you certain things, and they're going to share that with you. Some of this is going to be important to help sell the house, and some of it's going to be, well, about them or whatever it happens to be. There are certain things that you just cannot share, like, for instance, why they're selling, or their health concerns, or whatever it happens to be. Remember, you're not only their agent, but in a lot of situations, they might need a shoulder to cry on. There's a lot of psychology going on here, of course. Moving and selling your home and buying a home, it's a big emotional thing. So they might share all sorts of things with you that you wouldn't necessarily want to be shared about you, and so you shouldn't share it about them either. Remember, this duty survives the end of agency. So even if your listing expires or you sell the house or whatever it happens to be, when you're no longer their agent, you still owe this duty, confidentiality. As a broker, your probably most important fiduciary responsibility is going to be the accounting of funds, especially if you're a broker of record at a real estate agent or you're a sole proprietor. So most likely you're going to be the custodian of funds on deposit pending the clearing of a transaction. And there's, probably no more important duty to preserve the overall integrity of our industry than making sure that those funds are well accounted for. And so if someone puts $5,000 on deposit, there is $5,000 on deposit. So really simple. I'm always reminded of that cliche, which is a really good one. When you tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. And this is very simple with the accounting of funds. Whatever goes in a certain amount for any given transaction goes out for a certain amount. Pretty straightforward. It's not a bad time to quickly remember the 3 rules for moving money in the escrow account, which I should just quickly mention that in a lot of other states, they don't use the phrase escrow, they use the word trust, which you could see on the exam. Really quickly here, you can move money from the escrow account when the deal actually is closed. Not at the closing, but when it actually is closed, or what we call here in Massachusetts, on record. 2, you can move money from the escrow account through what we call joint instruction. This is usually going to be when the buyer backs out, unfortunately, and usually there's a form that's called the release of funds. And you're going to have to get the buyer to sign that and the seller to sign that. And in a nutshell, it says, hey, I'm the buyer. I'm backing out because I didn't get financed, or I don't like the home inspection, or whatever it happens to be. I'm backing out. Give me my deposit back. And you're going to have to get both people to sign that. Of course, the buyer is going to be more than happy to sign it. And once the seller signs it, then you can return the deposit as the broker. And third is court order. This is hopefully not going to happen in your particular case, but there are some escrow disputes that go to court, heaven forbid. And here's a quick reminder, really good test question here. Remember, the broker shall not resolve dispute. So if there is some type of dispute, it's not the broker's job to kind of, let me hear your side of the story, and then I, as the broker, will decide. No. Broker shall not resolve dispute. And lastly is reasonable care or due diligence. Once again, the exam service loves to throw in these alternate vocabulary phrases. You could see either one of these on the exam. What does this mean? It means do your job. Most real estate transactions include a nice hefty paycheck at the end of the rainbow. You might actually have to work for it. So, for instance, check the accuracy of your listing information if you're the listing agent. Very, very important. Check the heat source, check the square footage, check the zoning, check how many bedrooms the septic system is rated for. Whatever it happens to be, do your job. Do what most people would consider that you would reasonably double check. Super, super important. Do you have to check, for instance, what exact compass direction the house is pointed in? No, that would be unreasonable. Do you have to check the exact height of the building? Probably not. That would be unreasonable. Do you have to check that it has vinyl siding versus sheet shakes? Yeah, that would be pretty reasonable to check. Do your job. Be detailed oriented. Don't miss anything. And especially if you're commenting on any type of other especially abstract issue like beach rights or something like that, zoning, anything like that, make sure you have documents to back up your position. If you say it has beach rights or it has an easement or anything like that, make sure you have the paperwork that supports that. Just don't throw those benefits around without actually having done your homework. Do your homework, be reasonable, track everything down, double check everything. All right, so that's your last of your 6 fiduciary responsibilities. In our next video, we're going to marry these together in a matrix to compare them with your types of agency and the 6 fiduciary responsibilities. Going to put those together in a matrix in the next lesson.